since Faizabad has been renamed as Ayodhya, there have the tourism and the development has increased fourfold. Every other left, right, and center, every road is being redeveloped. The development there is going at full force. There's a new 6-lane highway in place, in talk, to connect Lucknow to Faizabad, which was formerly known, which was known as Faizabad, now known as Ayodhya. There's a new 6-lane highway in progress. Then there's a talk of bullet train from Delhi to Ayodhya to cater to that the tourism thing. Then there's also the talk of a new industrial corridor.
Namaste, everybody. Welcome to Chitti Media. My name is Sharan Sethi, your host. A lot of things are happening in Uttar Pradesh as the elections are coming up in 2022. Now, in recent passing, there's been a lot of decisions announced by the state BJP and Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. To discuss that, we have with us Advocate Ambuj Singh Bharadwaj from Lucknow High Court. Ambuji, namaste and welcome to Chitti Media.
Namaste. Hello to all followers of Chitti Media.
And how is kya mahal hai Uttar Pradesh mein? How is it going?
The only thing that you can be sure of, it's heating, and temperatures are going much higher than expected.
Right.
So let's say we have a few months to go. Let's see how things span up in the next few months.
Absolutely. And I look forward to our conversation now. So that brings me to my first question, and I'll go straight to it. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath yesterday announced a ban on meat and liquor in the cultural city of Mathura. But obviously, the opposition has a huge problem with it and says that this is an imposition of a majority will on a minority population that perhaps wants something else. What are your comments on this, and how do you view Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's recent move?
I think when Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath came to power, I had a talk with him before he was the Chief Minister, when he was a serving member of Parliament from the Gorakhpur constituency. This is around 2016. That was almost 6-8 months before him becoming the Chief Minister. And he told me something, and that talk happened in Delhi, right? He told me something very important, and that is something that I have seen in all his works in last 4.5, close to 5 years now, is that when I talk to anyone, the most that people want remember UP for, or they want to know UP for, is that there's a Taj Mahal in Agra. And he said to me that I want UP to be known for much more than just the Taj Mahal of the Agra, because it was known to be much more than of the Taj Mahal in Agra. Before the Mughal Empire came, it was not that UP did not exist. The Prayagraj, the Ayodhyas, the Varanasi, the Kashi, the Lucknow's culture, Agra, and all of these cities existed before the Mughals came. So, and that is something that he very much focused on. And that is something that you see in his policies over the course of last 5 years. Every single policy that has been made in last 5 years has been made with a mindset that UP is much more than what people want it to be, or I should say former governments have wanted it to be. UP is much more than the 20% population that lives here. UP is also about the 80% of other population that lives in UP. So that is something that is, this decision I see in that light only. Now Mathura, as we all know, it's a common thing that Mathura is known for the Janmabhoomi of Krishna. Now, and the decision that was announced in Mathura will be announced in Ayodhya too. Because when the focus that I was making on before was that UP is becoming hub of what you call spiritual tourism.
Right.
From Mirzapur, the Home Minister recently went to Mirzapur. There's a very famous temple there, and he inaugurated, and it's located on a higher pedestal, on a higher pedestal. So he inaugurated a ropeway there, and he mentioned it again that UP should be known for spiritual tourism because it is a land of Krishna, it is the land of Ram, it is the land of the great Kashi city, which is one of the oldest cities in the world. It is the land of Gautam Buddha. It is the land of Vindhyachal Mandir that I mentioned in Mirzapur. So this decision that I see is in respect of that only, that when we talk about Ram Mandir, when we talk about Krishna Mandir, or these things that we talk about, it is also associated with people's ideas and beliefs. So if you have to come to UP, or if you're living in, let's say, Mathura, you want to eat and drink, that's not a problem. That's not a problem to anyone else. But that eating and drinking cannot be at the expense of the beliefs of crores of people that visit Mathura, not only local Mathuraites, but crores of people that visit Mathura every year to on Janmashtami or on other days as a Krishna Janmabhoomi thing. So that decision I see in that light only. That and I might add, Mathura is a district not in isolation. It is not an island in the middle of nowhere. That once you're not in Mathura, you're not anywhere. There's on 20 kilometers on all sides of Mathura, you have next district where you can go, buy, drink, do whatever you want to, and you have the freedom of choice. But that freedom cannot be at the expense of crores of devotees that visit Mathura every year.
Right.
And that is his basic, I think, the basic idea behind that decision.
Absolutely. Ambuj, I agree with you on one thing, because recently when the Olympics concluded, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while he was meeting the representatives of different countries, and especially the South Korean representative, he did mention about how the representative must know about the history behind Ayodhya and the connection to South Korea. So in that sense, I do see the linkage. But tell me this, is this limited to Ayodhya and Mathura, or will this be a statewide policy that they will ban meat and alcohol?
Again, as I said, it's not your former governments, the Samajwadi Party governments, the former Congress governments may have seen it as a one-man job. But being a chief minister is not a one-man job. It's a whole administration that is there in place. Now, decisions will happen as and when the time comes. But for now, at least Ayodhya and Mathura are a certainty. And when and how things come, I am sure the UP government will make policy for it.
Right. That brings me to my next question. Now, one of the first landmark moves that we saw when Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath took office in 2017 was that he renamed a lot of places, right? And they've been planning to rename some of the districts right now as well, including Mirzapur, Aligarh, and some of the other Muslim-dominated areas. Now, why is this coming right before the election is what people are asking. If you wanted to rename, what were you doing in the last 5 years? You could have renamed it in the beginning itself. What the opposition is asking, and a lot of people are asking, is this a political move? If this is a political move, you should not be a political Hindu, and that you should have made this much more long ago.
I mean, and they did make it much more long ago. Let's just consider the facts that have happened in last 4 or 5 years. I mean, there's the ideologue of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay, died at a station near Varanasi. It's around 50 kilometers outside of Varanasi. He was found dead there. Now, circumstances might have been whatever they might have been, but he was found dead there. So, in order to recognize his memory, that place was known as Mughal Sarai, was renamed as Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay Nagar. Now, that didn't happen 3 months or 6 months before elections. That happened long ago. You look at Prayagraj. Prayagraj was known for its cultural history, the Sangam of the 3 rivers of Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati. Crores of people from around the world come during the Kumbh at Prayagraj. Prayagraj happened 3 years ago. Same goes for lots of other things. Now, renaming is more, people think it's based on political motives only. Now, they may or may not have been a political motive, that may or may not be true. But when I say that the primary motive of renaming is to reenact the cultural continuity of India, or for that matter, in this particular case, that particular district. For example, Before the district Prayagraj was named as Allahabad, or rather known as Allahabad, it was formerly known as Prayagraj, and that's written in the history. So when people think that Prayagraj was renamed because of some XYZ Muslim, anti-Muslim stand or whatever it might have been, the fact of the matter is, you ask a common person, what do you know Prayagraj for? The first thing that comes to his or her mind is, we know there's a Kumbh there. So
Yes.
when the place, and that is why where I was coming from, it is also not only because of these ideological reasons, as people would say. It is also because of tourism. That's like logic, common sense thing, that if a place, if you go to Ayodhya, do you go to Ayodhya because it's just another district in the midst of 20 other districts? No, you go to Ayodhya because you want to visit Ram Mandir. There is no other reason why you go to Ayodhya. So why not name it Ayodhya instead of the former name of Faizabad? So it's purely also because of the tourism reasons. And you look at the data, since since Faizabad has been renamed as Ayodhya, there have the tourism and the development has increased fourfold. Every other left, right, and center, every road is being redeveloped. The development there is going at full force. There's a new 6-lane highway in place, in talk, to connect Lucknow to Faizabad, which was formerly known, which was known as Faizabad, now known as Ayodhya. There's a new 6-lane highway in progress. Then there's a talk of bullet train from Delhi to Ayodhya to cater to that the tourism thing. Then there's also the talk of a new industrial corridor outside Ayodhya between Lucknow and Ayodhya, which is around 125-130 kilometers. So this corridor is being redeveloped again and again. The point of the whole conversation was that, is it being named for ideological reasons? It is. Let's not doubt it. Why, and why will they not name it for ideological reasons? Did they say before 2017 that we will not rename Ayodhya as Faizabad as Ayodhya? No, they did not say it. They said we want it to be known as Ayodhya. We want Allahabad to be known as Prayagraj. They said we want Shravasti to be known for Gautam Buddha Nagar.
Right.
We want Mirzapur to be known for Vindhyachal, and people have voted them by 3/4 majority to execute exactly that. Now, if they're executing exactly what they said, what's the problem in that?
Right. Thank you for those very interesting insights. Now, since we've touched upon the Uttar Pradesh elections, which is going to happen very soon, now it's going to be a very, very important elections, not just for the BJP, but for every other party as well, because it is going to eventually determine what is going to happen in 2024. So in that sense, what is the Uttar Pradesh BJP's trump card? What are they planning, and what is the strategy?
Again, the elections are 6 months away, and you said it is important for BJP. I also think it's the most important election in a 5-year cycle for BJP. One other reason it has become more important is because of what happened in West Bengal. Therefore, the next thing that BJP is planning here, there are full-fledged ways of winning elections. Now, there were some ifs and buts during the COVID second wave, but as we all know, the COVID second wave hit every part of the country with equal force, and no one was left untouched by it. Now, coming to the elections, I think there are 2-3 things very clear. When anyone who sees UP election right now, what do they see? They see there's this guy, Yogi Adityanath, with his full force, with his organization of the party, with the one of the most powerful politicians across country. In himself, not related to the party. Yogi Adityanath in himself is one of the most powerful politicians across country, because less than 50 years of age, he's been 5 terms members of parliament and the chief minister of the most populous state in the country. Right. Despite not coming from a a dominant caste in Uttar Pradesh, which are the OBCs. Despite not coming from the dominant caste in Uttar Pradesh, he has managed to achieve all that. So hats off, that's one. What do you see on the other side? You see on the other side, there's Akhilesh Yadav, who's trying to scramble things. You ask the talk here in UP is, and there's this there's this joke going around that Congress has leadership, but it doesn't have people on ground, the organization. Samajwadi Party has organization, but it doesn't have leadership, because Akhilesh Yadav has, what has he done in last 2.5 years, maybe post Lok Sabha? He has simply enjoyed the good food of home. That is the only thing that he has done in last 2.5 years. Still today, uh, today itself, that people are roaming around, the organization is headless. Then there is BSP. Now, what all of these people have got their own set of vote banks, and in a polity like Uttar Pradesh, it's very complicated in a lot of other states, because a lot of states are like two parties thing, that like Madhya Pradesh or a Rajasthan or a Gujarat. UP is 3-party, 4-party, sometimes 6-7 smaller parties too are involved in it. And that is why what Amit Shah did in 2014, that was pre-2014 Lok Sabha elections, is what BJP is relying upon. What he did at that point of time was that the most dominant caste in Uttar Pradesh are the Yadavs, who are firmly behind the Samajwadi Party. But what happened, and what used to happen pre-2014, was that Yadavs in UP have dominated others. They've even gone rogue, they were rampant, all sorts of things people have heard. You've heard the famous Badaयूं rape case, that the movie Article 15 may have said otherwise, but the primary accused in that was Yadav. Now, whenever an OBC sees Yadavs in power, they get scared. So this is the basic thing that Amit Shah did in 2014, was that he took all other OBCs apart from Yadavs and united them under the umbrella of Hindutva, where he said that, okay, we are giving representation to everyone, those who have not got representation in last 70 years. And that has worked wonders for BJP in UP. Since 2014, BJP has won every election with at least 3/4 majority. At least 3/4 majority. So that is working wonders for BJP even today. The non-Yadav OBC coalition that Amit Shah was able to form, they have allied with a couple of smaller regional parties, caste-based smaller parties with 5-10 seats here, a couple of districts there. They've tried to sort what we call, then they looked at the Dalit vote. Now, Dalit vote in UP is almost same as the Muslim vote in UP, which is 20%. Now, of all Dalit votes, there's a community called Jatavs, which is 50% of the Dalit votes. That means in total 10% of the total vote. You remove those, Jatavs are firmly behind the Bahujan Samaj Party. Even today, they were with Bahujan Samaj Party 20-30 years back. They are with BSP even today. But what Amit Shah managed to do again in 2014 was that he sort of removed Jatavs and got every other Dalit vote. So he called it a non-Yadav OBC, a non-Jatav Dalit. That's the program that BJP goes on in Uttar Pradesh. Non-Yadav OBCs, non-Jatav Dalits, and the upper castes. Of course, they have been the primary voters of BJP since a long time. Now, if you add all of these, that constitutes around 60 to 65% of the total vote. Now, the target is very simple. If we can target 60% of votes, we can easily get 40-45% of votes. We can easily have a 75% strike rate. And they have been doing exactly that since 2014 Lok Sabha elections, 2017 Vidhan Sabha elections, then again 2019 Lok Sabha elections, again Prime Minister Modi won with a huge majority, and the 2022 elections are going to be primarily fought on that. Now, the couple of new things that they have added this time around was that back in 2017 they did not have Yogi Adityanath as the face of the as a chief ministerial face. Yogi Adityanath brings a much more strong leadership, which is in general, this is not me saying, I think we've all seen the surveys that have happened over the years, and Yogi Adityanath has remained one of the most popular, if not the most popular chief minister over the years in the whole entire country. So that leadership added to the current social combination that has made BJP a very strong force to deal with. Now, the last elections that were there, they might have been something XYZ here or something ABC there. There might be some variations here and there, but more or less, if not 300, they got 325 seats out of 403. That's more than 3/4 majority. And that was the number that no one had ever achieved in Uttar Pradesh. Not even the Congress at the peak of Indira Gandhi could achieve 325 out of 403. And that was something that they did in 325 without giving a CM phase as strong as Yogi Adityanath. So as we all see and as we all hear, I think the general feeling is BJP is coming back, and BJP is coming back strongly. And
Right.
Yogi Adityanath, by the way, will become the first chief minister in the history of, if he comes back, will become the first chief minister in the history of Uttar Pradesh, barring one chief minister, who will be the second chief minister in history of Uttar Pradesh to come back to power
Right.
with a majority. So that's the basic thing of currently the political thing going on.
Interesting. Thank you for that elaborate answer. Now, Ambuj, one very interesting thing that you mentioned is about the caste equation and how this time, not just the Bharatiya Janata Party, but even the other parties are sort of playing around with that, because equations are changing and Uttar Pradesh is the ultimate litmus test. Now, in that sense, what we've seen this time in the last 6 months is that the Samajwadi Party and the Bahujan Samaj Party, they are pandering to the upper caste voters. They're pandering to the Brahmins by organizing Brahmin Sammelans. And I think 3 days ago, we had the BJP announcing that they want to target minority votes as well in districts like Aligarh and Saranpur, etc. Now, what brings these changes? If it's the opposition's desperation, now that can be understood because they want to desperately win more seats and get more electoral percentage. But what is the change with the BJP this time?
So you look at the opposition's vote bank, and the fact is very clear that if you're a BS, see, Congress is nowhere near to come in power in Uttar Pradesh. It might not even touch double digits. So the primary opposition parties to BJP here are Samajwadi Party and the Bahujan Samaj Party. Now, there was a variation. If you look at last 5 assembly elections, or the course of last 5 assembly elections, there was a variation once in 2007 where the seats where BJP's candidate was not strong. And that is why I say the polity of Uttar Pradesh is very complicated for lots of people to understand, because on seats where the candidate of BJP was not strong enough to counter Samajwadi Party, Brahmins strategically voted for Bahujan Samaj Party to vote out the Samajwadi Party. That was something which was seen in one of the elections, like 2-3 elections back in 2007. Some people think that can be replicated. In my understanding, and I'll tell you where it started from. The route where it started that will target the upper caste vote. Now, I think couple of years back, we all would have heard the famous Vikas Dubey encounter thing. I don't know if lots of people would have heard, where a gangster who was a Brahmin by caste, which doesn't matter anyway, had killed a DSP. Now, it was not just a Havaldar, it was a DSP. Now, Yogi Adityanath's plank of governance has been simple. The criminals will not find space in Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh, the crime is famous across India, that we all know the XYZ names that we all know. The Yogi Adityanath policy is very simple. The criminals will not find space in Uttar Pradesh, and the police must do everything that it must do to counter the criminal network. Now, in that process, Vikas Dubey, a gangster, around 100 kilometers out of Lucknow, near the Kanpur district, had shot a DSP. Now, what happened later was that this whole thing happened where police went all out to capture Vikas Dubey. He was captured, then he was running, and then eventually he was encountered. Now, from there, this whole thing sparked that Brahmins are being targeted in Uttar Pradesh, which is a joke, if you ask me. Right. How can one target a criminal, and how can a criminal have a caste or some other XYZ? How can a criminal have any caste? If Yogi Adityanath's policy is very simple, that I will make sure that every criminal goes to jail or is forced to run out of Uttar Pradesh, if he has to or she has to live in Uttar Pradesh, he or she has to abide by law and order. Then those who do not abide by law and order, the police will take action. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a Brahmin or you're a Muslim or an upper caste or a lower caste. That's a very simple policy right now. Former governments have targeted have in fact protected the criminals under the name of the political system. They have protected criminals. Now, Vikas Dubey was not protected, and by the way, he was member of the Samajwadi Party. Still, he was not protected, and the justice was done. Now, what happened later was that this whole spark started from there, that Brahmins are being targeted. Since then, there has been two set of by-elections. In one set of by-elections, BJP won 9 out of 11 assembly constituencies. The other set of by-elections, BJP won 6 out of 7 assembly constituencies. By-elections happened for various reasons. Some resigned, some had become MPs, so on and so forth. Then Panchayat elections happened. BJP has won 65 out of 75, and then with allies it has won 68 out of 75 districts where there's the Panchayat head, that's called the Jila Panchayat Adhyaksh, the head of the Jila Panchayat. Now, of 75 districts, BJP has, or allies, with allies, it has 68 of them. Since then, all of these things have happened. No election whatsoever has shown even one sign of Brahmins going away from the BJP or voting for anyone else. So the peddle or the propaganda can go on, but I don't see this whole Brahmin thing or non-Brahmin thing or targeting Brahmin thing doing any substantial damage to the BJP in upcoming elections.
Right. So what you're saying is that it will be restricted to the media discussions itself, because I think some of the people who peddled this kind of misinformation and speculation are some of the journalists based in Lucknow, and they said where the BJP is going to get affected because of the Vikas Dubey encounter. Now you're saying that is completely not going to happen, and that the Brahmins are with the BJP. That is very interesting. Ambuj, this has been a really good show, and thank you for your very interesting insights that you shared with us. And of course, without having to say so, we would love to have you time and again on our show to discuss a wide range of topics. Thank you so much, and have a nice day. Namaskar.
Thank you. And I'd love to come whenever I can. Thank you.
Absolutely. We would love to host you as well. And to all our viewers, please do like, share, and subscribe to Chitti Media. I'm your host, Sharan Sethi, signing off.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.